Hello guys, hope you're doing well as always and welcome back to another video and a slightly different video today. You may notice we're not in a football stadium, but what we are going to be doing today, ladies and gents, is talking about Joey Barton, because what better way to spend your Monday evening than listening to me talking about a former professional footballer discussing whether or not women should be allowed to talk about sports. Now let's just check, it is 1920, oh it's 2024. We're still doing videos like this? Now, for those of you that don't know much about Joey Barton's professional career, which I'd imagine is a fair few of you, he played most of his career in the Premier League as a central midfielder, playing for Manchester City, Newcastle United, Queen's Park Rangers and Burnley FC. And since being sacked by Bristol Rovers in October 2023, Joey Barton has tucked himself away, he's kept his head down, he's kept quiet, focusing on improving himself as a Oh no, he hasn't, he's been saying derogatory things about women. Oh, Joey. Taking a brief moment to be serious and actually look at the overall point that he's been making, the general argument that Joey Barton's been making about women in sport is that there shouldn't be women's pundits and commentators on men's football. In a series of tweets over the last few months, he stated that women shouldn't be talking with any kind of authority in the men's game, as they are not qualified to talk about it because it's a different game. Now, let's just be fair for a moment and actually take in what he said, because despite all the bigoted comments that he's made since, if we're trying to understand why he said the things that he said, we need to explore it with some reality. Firstly, of course, there's a different level of quality between the men's top divisions and the women's top divisions. The English FA had actually banned women's football in 1921, a ban that wasn't lifted for 51 years. And by the 70s, men's football was already well established across the world. In fact, the women's league format that exists today wasn't founded until 1991. So in just over 30 years, how can you expect there to be the same level of quality within the men's game and the women's game, considering how much longer the men's game has been existing compared to the women's? It's just unreasonable for starters, and when you add in the biological differences between male athletes and female athletes, there is obviously going to be an advantage going the men's way. But that's not to say that women's sport hasn't come on leaps and bounds, especially when it comes to football. And as we've seen in the last few years, there's been so much more attention shone on the successes of the Lionesses and the Women's Super League in England. And the level of football is without question impressive. So in some ways you can sort of understand why he's formed the opinions that he has, because there is a skill gap between the two divisions. But the way in which he's been expressing his opinion is beyond derogatory at this point. So what has Joey Barton actually been saying? He's been sharing compilations of women's footballers' worst moments. I'd hate to see a compilation of his. You could make a movie. He's accused women of sleeping their way into their respective positions. Based off your footballing ability, I'd assume that that's a similar way in which you managed to scrape your way into the England team. He recently criticised the awarding of the BBC Sports Personality of the Year to Mary Earps, calling her a big sack of spuds who plays for a girls team. A girls team that won the European Championships and reached the World Cup final, with Mary Earps winning 2 Golden Glove awards this year alone, making some iconic saves across the way. The only thing that Joey Barton saved this year is himself the chance of getting himself another job in management, which is probably for the best. He's also criticised vloggers and online football pundits, tweeting out the stadiums and off the concourses with this influencer fucking nonsense. And I agree, there's absolutely no place for people to be sharing their views on football in an online space. Actually, that shoots both of us in the foot, doesn't it, Joey? All jokes aside, most of the accusations that he's been making are bigoted, spiteful, and they're reaching the point of coming across as very, very hateful. In fact, one of his main targets, Eni Aluko, he's been tweeting abuse at for months, even photoshopping hers and Lucy Ward's face over Fred and Rose West, 2 of the most notorious English serial killers of all time. ITV later published the statement, "For Joey Barton, an ex-professional player with a significant social media presence, to target 2 of our pundits, Eni Aluko and Lucy Ward, with such vindictive remarks based on gender, and to invoke the names of serial killers in doing so is clearly contemptible and shameful on his part. Football is for everyone." So Joey Barton probably saw this and apologised, right? He's realised the error of his ways and he's come back and he's gone, do you know what? I take a step back, I shouldn't have done this. Nope, instead he compared the pundits to Stalin for murdering hundreds of thousands, if not millions of football fans' ears in the last few years. What a load of Bolshevik. He's even been retweeting clips of Ricky Gervais' stand-ups from the Golden Globes, a comedian that combines free speech with his comedy, making jokes about the likes of cancer, religion and famine. And the thing with Ricky Gervais, whether you like his comedy or not, his jokes are bulletproof. The taste in which he makes his jokes might not be for everyone, but there is a reason, there is a punchline, there is a bulletproof structure to his jokes. And on the plus side, he's funny. What Joey Barton has done is none of those things. Along the way in his explosive rants, he's called out the likes of Ed Balls, Gary Neville and Jeremy Vine, which despite sounding like the shittest boy band ever, just goes to show the place that Joey Barton's in. And the only possible reason why I can even fathom that he's decided to go on this rampage is relevancy. And it feels very Andrew Tate. Weirdly enough, both of those men have ended up in jail. Take from that what you will. In making his views so public and gaining the traction that he has by dying on this hill, he's creating a hate mob directed towards female football pundits, footballers, and quite frankly, anyone involved in football altogether who isn't a man. Like ITV said, football is for everyone, and the irony of this whole situation is, throughout his online tirade, Barton has been promoting free speech and a right to an opinion, and Joey, I actually agree with you on this. Everyone should have the right to an opinion, and everyone should be able to exercise their right to free speech. But using your platform with the intention of shutting up an entire gender from talking about an entire sport, a sport that you enjoyed a limited success at, by the way, is promoting the opposite of free speech. The definition of a pundit is a person who offers a mass media opinion or commentary on a particular subject area, in this case football, and that person who becomes a pundit has no specified gender. It can be anyone, and they can voice an opinion. Joey, this is the one point that I agree with you on. Everyone should have the right to voice an opinion, so why don't you shut the fuck up and let people get on and express their own opinions? This is Joey Barton, a player with a career highlight reel that's mostly filled with his personal life, such as allegedly beating up his wife, a brief stint in prison for a fight outside a Mackey's, and a peak on-field performance of kneeing Sergio Aguero, one of the greatest strikers the Premier League has ever seen, up the arse. Are we really going to let this man lecture us about experience being a necessity to have an opinion on football? He's the same man, by the way, who, according to the FA's inquiry into his gambling allegations that saw him suspended from all footballing activity for 13 months, actually did more poorly whenever he bet on his own team. He's giving female football pundits a lecture on not being qualified to talk about football after he lost thousands for betting on the actual team he played for. And I'm gonna guess he probably bet with Virgin. There are so many talented female football pundits out there, and it feels wrong that I'm even having to say this in 2024. Gabby Logan, Alex Scott, Laura Woods, Emma Haynes, all fantastic pundits. Way better than some of the men that we see on our TV screens. And the thing is as well, to be a good pundit, you don't have to have an encyclopedic knowledge of the sport. A lot of pundits' main selling value is their personalities. They add entertainment because we're watching them to be entertained as well as informed. Ian Wright, Roy Keane, Paul Merson, and maybe I'm doing these pundits a disservice by putting them in this category, and that's not to say that they're not good footballing pundits, but they are entertaining, and there are so many women that fall into this category as well. Jill Scott and Farrah Williams, just to name a couple. There's also a whole host of men that commentate on football that didn't even play the sport. Dan Walker hosted numerous football shows on the BBC like Football Focus. Martin Tyler, Peter Drury, and the late John Motson never kicked a ball professionally, yet they are some of the most iconic voices that you let talk about the sport we love. And finally, Arsene Wenger, one of the most decorated, one of the greatest football managers ever seen, never kicked a ball professionally. So why is it okay for these people to have a place in sport, but not women who haven't played the men's game? It does not make sense. There are so many holes in this guy's argument. Football is an incredibly sought after and hard industry for anyone to get into, let alone women. So why are we attacking the people that are already struggling to get into the sport that we love? It's fair enough that you can have your opinion. It's fair enough that you share that. But when you're sharing it over months, get a life, mate. Touch some grass. It's been like 2 months now, and it is getting boring. And you can call me a woke activist. You can call me a snowflake. You can call me whatever you want. I'd rather be any of those things than being a washed up Premier League footballer who sat on a beach somewhere and spends his days on Twitter trying to get bites out of people. Admittedly, I am sat in my room making videos about this whole situation, but we live in a world where there's so much hate, so much negativity. Why be the person to spread more of that nonsense when you could just spread love and just be kind to people? Have your opinion, that's fair enough. But when it gets to the point where you're literally photoshopping people onto serial killers, I think it's fair to say that's crossing a line. So ladies and gents, I will leave that there. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts, your opinions on this whole situation, because it's certainly one that's dividing a lot of people. And I think that there is a silent majority online that aren't speaking up because they see Joey Barton's tweets and they have more of a life than he is than to voice their opinions on the matter than Joey Barton does, sat on a beach wherever he is, enjoying his retirement fund. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Spread peace and love.